Hi, I'm Christine from House of Smocking, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do waffle smocking. Waffle smocking is similar to Van Dyke, and it's worked from the right to the left. If you're left-handed, you would work from the left to the right. So on this one I've done it on a pillowcase, and you can see the pattern that it makes. Quite often it's probably nicer to do it in the same colour thread as your fabric, as in this one, because then it shows up the diamond design better. So here I've got my pleated fabric ready to make my frill, and in my next video I will give you the measurements and show you how to make up the pillowcase. So I'm using a DMC cotton pearl, which is a number 12. It's a single thread, and I'm still using my number 7 crewel needle. I've tied off on the second pleat down, so that's the holding row, the first pleat and the second pleat of thread. So I've tied off on there, and I've brought my needle and my thread through to the front, just above that second pleat of thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what we call an old pleat. So I've already used that one because my thread's coming out of it. So I'm going to go through that one and then 2 more. So that's an old and 2 new. I'm going to pull my thread all the way through. I've used about 4.5 times the length of thread for this piece, so that I can get to the end without having a knot in the middle. So I've gone through all 3 pleats. So now again I'm using my thumbnail to push 2 pleats across, and I'm going to pick up the old one, so the one I've already used. So that's coming out of the left hand side, and I'm going to go in the right side of that pleat and pick up 2 more. Again, like normal smocking, you're keeping your needle parallel to the pleat of threads at all time. So the important thing to remember is not to pull your thread too tight so that it distorts the pleats. So then we're going from the second pleat of thread up to the first. So again, I've used that one, so we want that old one and then 2 new ones. And then back up again. So we're alternating up and down. So the old one, using my thumbnail to push the 2 that I want together. So that's 3 pleats that I'm going through all together. And then down to the next pleat of thread. That's it. So I'm alternating between the first and the second pleat of thread. And again, you can see that I'm not pulling my thread too tight to distort the pleats. So again, separating with my nail 2 pleats. So I've got an old one and 2 new one. So unlike Van Dyke, where you would go over again, you're just picking up the pleats as you go along. So it's quite a quick stitch. So again, an old and 2 new. And back up, an old and 2 new. One old and 2 new. And you keep going along right in the same way, 1 old, 2 new, all the way across. And again, without distorting the pleats by pulling your thread too tight. So I'll carry on with this. As you can see, my thread's on the front side, and you can see how the diamond is forming. So that's the first half of your diamond. Okay, so I shall carry on to the end and come back to show you the second row. So I've now completed my row, and I'm just going to show you how I finish off. So my thread is coming out. I'm hoping you can see this pink. So I'm just going to go down next to that where my thread's coming out. Turn over, and then I'm going to tie off on the top of the pleat. So I go through the pleat and then through the loop, and I do that twice. I'm just going to go through one more time just so that the tail is pointing outwards into the seam, and then trim off. Okay, so that's my first row, and you can see the patterns forming already. So you need 3 pleater threads for the whole diamond, and the next row I'm going to start from the second pleat, but then I'm going to go downwards. So I'll just get my thread ready. So now I have tied off my thread in the same place as I did last time, on the second pleater thread down. Okay, and then I've come through to the front next to where I came out last time, just there. So as we did for the first row, I'm going through, and I'm going to take my thread, my needle, as close to my thread as I can without going through the same hole. So I'm going to pick up that old one and the 2 new ones, and again I want to be as close to the bottom of that thread as I can be. I'm hoping you can see this pale pink. But this time, instead of going up, I'm going to come down. So I'm going to go down on the right hand side of the pleat I've just used, and I'm going to pick up that old one and 2 new ones. And because the thread is very long, you do have to be careful so that it doesn't knot as you go. So we've gone from the second pleated thread down to the third. We're now going from the third one back up to here. And this is when you know whether you went wrong or not on the first row, because these 3 pleats match the 3 that I used on the first row. Again, keeping your needle parallel at all times and not pulling it too tight. So go back down and across, an old and 2 new, and then back up, an old and 2 new. Then back down, an old and 2 new, and then back up, an old and 2 new. And then you continue this to the end. Oops. I like to pull my thread in the direction it's going. So if my thread, like this time, it's going down towards me, then I like to pull the thread in that direction, and it makes the thread lay nicely. So rather than pulling side to side, I like to pull that way or down. And then hopefully, if I separate these pleats, you can see how the diamond pattern is beginning to form. So you've got your nice diamonds there. So I'll carry on to the end, and then I'll show you the next row. So I've now finished 2 rows, and 2 rows will give you the diamond pattern that we're after. Okay, so to start another row, a third row, let's say we need to work in pairs, so you need 2 rows to form the pattern. So as we did for the first row, I've tied off on the back on the first pleat, and I've come through just above the orange pleated thread, and I'm going to go through the first one and 2 new ones, and then I'm going to go up and pick up the same one that I used at the bottom and 2 new ones, and again it's matching the 3 that I've used on the previous row. So like the first row, I start on the pleated thread there and then go up and down, up and down. So now we come down, pick up an old and 2 new, and then back up for an old and 2 new. Back down, so I'm alternating between the 2 pleated threads. Right. And then an old and 2 new. And again, just carry on like this to the end. And then, as you've probably realised, for the next row, I will start there and go down. So I go from there, down, up, down, up, down. So I've got 2 rows which form my diamond pattern. So I'll carry on with those and let you see the finished result. I'll just do a couple more for you. So again, picking up the pleat I've just used and 2 new ones. And again, an old one and 2 new ones. And the old and the new is a little saying I got from Judith Adams from Australia, who was teaching us Van Dyke. Yeah. Okay, so I shall carry on, and as you say, you can see now how the diamond pattern is forming. So I've now finished my third row. I'm hoping you can see this pink. And I've tied off again in the same place as I did for this is my fourth row. That was my third row I've just done. I tied off in the same place. I've come through on the front, and I'm going to go through those 3 pleats, which is an old and 2 new ones. And then I'm going to go down, so I'm going to pick up an old one and then 2 new ones. I probably should have given myself a holding row at the bottom, but there we go. Again, 3 pleats, an old and 2 new. And you continue to the end of the row like that. Not very neat, is it? There we go. And you should be able to now see the 2 diamond, or 3 diamonds in fact, 1, 2, 3 diamond pattern forming. What's interesting is you might like to see what the back looks like, as if you prefer it without the thread showing. You can either use, as I did with this one, using the same colour thread so it doesn't show, or you could do it on the back. So if I did the stitches on the back, then this would then be the, if you imagine this would be the front, and you could have that design on the front of your fabric. So you'd have the same diamond design but without the threads. Anyway, so I shall carry on to the end of the row just to show what it looks like when it's finished. Okay. So I've now finished all 4 rows, and there you can see the diamond pattern it forms. I haven't taken out the top row yet because I haven't back smocked, but I'm going to back smock the top holding row. So that's 2 threads in white in cable stitch before I'm ready to make up. But there we have waffle smocking. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry it took me so long.